Take two. Welcome back to HoopsHD, everybody. I'm your host, Chad Sherwood.
Had you not screwed up the first one?
This is our weekly HoopsHD Report. We're recording it here on the evening of Monday, November 29th, a few minutes later than we started recording it because David Griggs screwed up the first podcast. I'm your host, Chad Sherwood.
We got 60 minutes into it and had to start.
David Griggs and John Titel up top here. Joby Fortson and David Dorman below me. We got a lot to get to. First of all, I got to know here, John Titel, we sent you last week. You weren't with us because we sent you out to Vegas to cover the Roman main event. Then after that, we sent you even further west to Anaheim to cover the Wooden Legacy. So you come to us from Hawaii now? You keep still going west?
I mean, until the Pac-12 China game is reinstituted, I'll be happy to keep going west. Yeah, it was a great long week of basketball in Vegas and in Anaheim. It was great to see a little Pac-12 pride with my Wildcats beating Michigan in the championship game in Vegas. Give it up, Dorman. And for the Trojans to beat San Diego State in an ugly, ugly championship game where nobody could make a shot in Anaheim. And it's just nice to be back in the arena where the games are being played.
That's right. The game was so late that nobody watched it in the East Coast here anyhow, so it doesn't really matter, right? But
It put me to sleep. I was watching it and nearly fell asleep.
We really do have a lot to get to, though, tonight. And all I'm going to do is start by pulling up our screen share here, if I can figure out how to get it to work, which sometimes happens, sometimes doesn't.
We've only been doing this for about 8 years, Chad.
Oh, there's all these boxes it pulls up. It says I can pull up a whiteboard. I don't even know why I would pull up a whiteboard, but I think we should see the West Coast Conference standings on the board there, if I'm correct. And I thought that this might be a good place to start, even though they are no longer the number one team in the nation. Gonzaga dropping to number 3. But Joby, let me start with you. This is a hell of an interesting week for Gonzaga, playing UCLA on Tuesday, then Duke on Friday here. They split the 2 games, but one of the toughest weeks we've ever seen non-conference from any team ever, I think.
Yeah, no. And Gonzaga traditionally has to do that because once you get into conference play, you have a fall off. And it's not like playing in the Big Ten or the ACC. Oh, wait a minute. The West Coast is actually decent this year as other teams, especially BYU. But Gonzaga showed why that, I wouldn't be surprised if at the end of the year they are number one. Duke, Duke likewise did the job, in the battle of the super freshmen. Banchero won, but Holmgren's the real deal. Gonzaga's the real deal. This is a Final Four caliber team. And if you didn't believe it watching the very high profile game on Friday night, you missed something on Tuesday night.
Yeah, well, Titel, I know you were in Vegas, but you were not actually at either of these Gonzaga games. But my understanding was that UCLA came into the game a little bit hurt. Some of them, not necessarily hurt, but a couple of the players had been under the weather the day before. Were the Zags are as good as what they were against UCLA, or were they more of what the team we saw against Duke, or is it just too early to even know that answer?
I mean, I would hope that we can agree that Gonzaga is one of the best teams in the nation, regardless of the win-loss outcome versus the Dukies. UCLA, I picked a few weeks ago as my pick to win it all, and they were destroyed by the Zags. They were down 20 plus points early in the second half. Everybody was hitting. It's one thing if Timmy goes off with 30, or if Chet Holmgren has a triple double, but it was a team effort. Nembhard had 24. Strother was rebounding and scoring. And I mean, maybe it is UCLA's fault for not showing up bigger in a big game, but I give all the credit to the Zags and think that even in this very tough conference, because you can see there's plenty of teams with a 0 next to their losing record up top here, that the Zags are clearly one of the best teams in the country.
They are. And I guess you mentioned those other teams at Dorman. Let me bring you in here. The team at the top of the standings here at 8-0, the only 8-0 team in the country. So maybe the best team in the nation if you just go by record and nothing else. How about those San Francisco Dons just continuing to win games?
Rolling along, look really good. I do think UAB is a very solid team, and it wasn't the prettiest of games, but they beat them, and they were winning down the stretch, and they held on. San Francisco's good. They're going to compete. I'm really excited to see them get BYU and Gonzaga and St. Mary's. The top 4 in this conference are really, really good.
Yeah, Chad, pull up the San Francisco profile.
Absolutely. Give us a second here. Let's see if we can get that up here, but I will try to if this thing works, which, it's 50-50 sometimes.
Yeah.
On the left here, we'll pull up the San Francisco profile. But David, you want to comment on the Dons?
Well, yeah, because one of the things is that there isn't anything great on here. And, 5 or 6 of these were basically home bye wins, but it's decent enough. Like the neutral floor win against UAB is an indicator that this is at least a team that's that's good enough to land inside the bubble. And have we ever really said that about them before, like ever, in the time we've been doing this? Now, again, home against Vegas, this is a pretty good Fresno State team, Grand Canyon at Arizona State. So when you look at the profile, you don't really have anybody that's solidly inside the bubble, but you don't have anybody that's so far away from it that this is not going to accumulate into good metrics. I wish, Joby's we got a metrics person here. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, I agree. And the key is looking, you do have, as you point out, the Davidson, the Towson right now, but I think a lot of those games, can they maintain tier 3 and up? If it's, it doesn't matter if a team's in the 300s or if a team is in, the higher, the higher 200s, it's still going to be treated the same by the committee. You got to get that win no matter what. The fact is, what I found the most interesting with what your comments were is, well, they had the UAB win, but a lot of the other ones were just bye wins. Wait. San Francisco has bye wins. That should tell you something. That should tell you who the power is and where it resides. And so, yes, I think San Francisco has developed a strong base, but let's face it, they can't slip up in the West Coast on the bottom half of it, and they need to pick off a few wins if they really do want to be inside the bubble. The last time them being inside the bubble was last year when they were 1-0 after beating the defending national champions.
Yeah, when you look at the Dons schedule, a couple things about the Dons schedule. First of all, don't overlook the December 28th game against the Academy of Art, who just beat UC Davis by 20 points the other night.
Academy of Art.
But you start the West Coast Conference season with at St. Mary's and at Gonzaga, and there is not a full double round robin in the West Coast, but they have each of the top 3 teams. BYU, Gonzaga, and St. Mary's twice, home and home. So the Dons will have the chance in conference, I think, to make up a little bit for scheduling Morgan State, Long Island, Prairie View, Southern Illinois, who's pretty weak this year, and Academy of Art. But I also pulled up St. Mary's. They're on the right, just real quick, Titel. They've got I've got the ratings we're seeing up on the screen here, by the way, are the J&G ratings for every team because we'll go by net once the net comes out. But if we were to switch to KenPom ratings, I think the Gales are going to start with 5 straight top 100 teams in December. So they're going to get their tests at least on the right there.
Well, they are, and they better get those wins because as you see in February, who's got a harder schedule than 3 of 4 with Gonzaga twice and BYU once?
Ooh, yeah. That's a brutal end. Yeah.
Right. And to further your point, Chad, further it quite a bit, like Utah State, Colorado State, San Diego State, these are teams that are sort of home court heroes. They might not be as good as top 25 teams, but they're certainly good enough to beat top 25 teams at home. Those teams combined will probably lose less than 5 home games all year. So if they can get some of those, they're going to get a lot of credit for those wins.
Yeah, they will.
Chad,
yes, go ahead, Dorman.
Chad, can you go back to that team page one last second there? Those St. Mary's, those wins against Oregon and Notre Dame are going to go a long way. Like San Francisco, they need to pick off a few in the conference in the West Coast, but Oregon and Notre Dame is going to sit well for them.
I agree, and the Wisconsin loss, I don't think is going to hurt them at all at this point.
Not that bad.
Upcoming schedule here in the West Coast Conference, just real quick, Griggs, as we are recording this right now, Tarleton is about to tip off at Gonzaga, but look a little further down the list here. We have St. Mary's Utah State game.
We got Beehive. We got the Beehive. BYU at Utah Valley.
We didn't even mention BYU's win over Utah earlier as well.
How about BYU unbeaten, way high in the rankings? How did we not mention this? Is this a protected seeded caliber team? They've looked it so far.
Yes, I truly believe if they might not now, if they play Gonzaga 3 times, they need to get one to get a protected seat. But if they do get that one of the 3, if they face in the conference tournament, then they've done enough preseason that barring multiple losses to the bottom half. In other words, you can give a San Francisco loss, you can give a St. Mary's loss, et cetera. If they can do that, I truly do believe that they are a top 16 on the seed list.
Yeah, they did pick up that huge win over Utah, the big rivalry game. Game to note on Saturday. It is technically a neutral court game, but it's in Seattle, so it's kind of a home court game. Gonzaga, Alabama should be a huge showcase game on Saturday.
That's a huge showcase game. A huge game of importance is this St. Mary's at Colorado State game. That is probably
and at Utah State with this we just mentioned about St. Mary's, the way they start December. Yeah,
right, because that is 2 Mountain West opponents that are I think based on what I've seen, I think that they're good enough to make the field. I realize that we're 6 games into, we're about a fifth of the way through. We've got 4/5 to go, but both of those teams have looked the part.
Let's jump over from the West Coast Conference to what I think is the number 1 conference in the nation, with sitting here with 3 top 10 teams, 4 top 25 teams, but 3 in the top 10. Everybody with either 0 or 1 loss other than Kansas State. Joby, let me start with you in the Big 12 here. Only 2 losses on the week, and maybe we should start with one of those losses, though. When we're talking Big 12. Maybe we should start with what happened between Dayton and Kansas, because it was a fluke in what the Big 12 has otherwise been incredible all season.
I mean, and Dayton did it again as well. Kansas has already done their work this year. It's not like Kansas, everybody goes, well, Kansas is a fraud because they lost to Dayton. No. Kansas is still a top 10 team, guys. It just, these things happen sometimes. Kansas, Michigan State, we thought, well, Michigan State's kind of down this year. We'll get to the Big 10 later. Michigan State's not down. They're good. And I think that would be a blip for Kansas. Will Kansas win their 8th out of 9-year conference tournaments, having broken it? No, I think there are other teams that can challenge them for it, and including the defending national champions. But I'll tell you that that game, I think we're going to be looking back at it, and maybe, who knows, if Dayton splits with the Bonnies and kind of dominates within the A-10, maybe they'll be able to hang their hat on it. But I think it's a blip. I think it's the anomaly.
We may talk a little bit more, Dayton, when we get over to the Atlantic 10, because
we're going to talk about them more than just a little bit.
But Titel, the other team that's super impressive this week, winning the battle for Atlantis, with the top 2 tournaments out there, was Baylor, who took care of Arizona State, which I'm sure you'd love to see. Got a game effort from VCU and then rolled over Michigan State, I thought, in the finals. This Baylor team, I think, is looking as good as they were at the end of last season. And they were pretty good at the end of last season, as I recall.
Yes, they had 1 regular season loss last year. They have 0 regular season losses this year. The metrics love them. Beating ASU, everybody loves that. They get a cupcake on Saturday with Arkansas Pine Bluff, who's the worst team arguably in Division I. So the spread could be like 40-something points, and they still might beat them. But after that, they get a very tough test in mid-December. Host Villanova at Oregon, who albeit is not the Oregon of past. But we'll see if they handle Villanova easily. Then I think we're talking about, then we can start having that chance to talk about a possible repeat national champion, which I know has not happened in many, many years. And I didn't think it could happen this year after they lost guys like Jared Butler and Davion Mitchell, but they are that good.
It was Florida.
I'm with John there. I can't believe how good Butler looks because Baylor looks, because without Butler and Mitchell, I thought they were losing a lot, and they looked really good right away.
Griggs, I got to ask you about one other team here.
Okay.
And we at HoopsHD here, we have a little fun with it, but we give out an award every season, for 2 awards every season, to the bottom of Division I. We call it, we have our centenary award. It's up there. It's for the worst team in D1, and an award we started a few years back called the Stallings Award for the worst power conference team in D1. And last year, after only winning 2 games, we gave the Stallings Award to Iowa State. Here we are we're not even in December yet. And that same Iowa State program is cracked both polls. It is 19 in the AP poll with a 6-0 start. I'm blown away by what I've seen from these Cyclones.
Yeah, and pull them up here because they had a hell of a week, but they really had a hell of a season before that. Beating Xavier and Memphis, both ranked teams, at least at the time. I don't think maybe neither one of them's in the rankings today.
Memphis is still in the rankings.
Oh, Memphis is still in there. But doing that on a neutral floor, and it's, you know, when you do it twice in 1 week, that is not just a fluke. That isn't just about off day for the other team. And if you watch those games, this Iowa State team actually did look really good. Do they keep up this pace, or is it sort of like, I mean, it seems like every year there's a team that has a big showing in one of these exempt events and they get high in the rankings and then fall off the face of the earth. I remember when Wazoo won something, and I forget which one it was, but they were ranked in the 20s and everybody was like, oh my God, look at this team. And then
you've seen it out of DePaul a few times when they start off.
Yeah, I've seen it at DePaul. I mean, you see it from somebody every year. I get the sense that we're not going to see that out of Iowa State. I think that they are good.
Well, non-conference, they've got 2 tests left at Creighton, and it's not a very good Creighton team this year, I don't think.
Yeah.
And the big battle with Iowa on December 9th. After that, you got to wait till Big 12 play.
Right. And I mean, like you said, Chad, this is a stacked conference. They needed out of conference wins because it's going to be very, very hard to get them in there. But 8-10, like with the wins they have out of conference, 8-10 in this league, there's probably a better than 3/4 chance that you're going to be inside the bubble. This league is that.
I would agree. My preseason projection was that, this is going to be a top heavy Big 12 and the bottom is just going to be so awful and blah, blah. Mea culpa. I was wrong. This conference is deep. Even the ineligible Oklahoma State Cowboys have been picking people off. I mean, this is a strong conference, top to bottom.
Yeah, and you could see the upcoming schedule here of the Big East games. Quick note, Wednesday's Florida and Oklahoma. If you don't live in the state of Oklahoma, good luck trying to watch that game. They're just, apparently there was no TV spot with the ACC Big Ten Challenge for the ESPN networks. It fell to Oklahoma's own package, which is only shown and is not streamed outside the state of Oklahoma. We're setting ourselves back about 30 years with the way the Sooners are handling the broadcast of that game. But
it's got to be on somewhere.
It's on. If you live in the state of Oklahoma, you can watch it on Bally Sports Oklahoma. That's it.
On Bally, I get that.
I'm surprised the Sunshine Network in Florida.
It might, but I haven't heard that yet. Also, starting with some of these games this week, there is a challenge series between the Big East and the Big 12 that's going to run about the next 2.5 weeks. So this week's Texas Tech, Providence, Kansas St. John's, Iowa State, Creighton, Xavier, Oklahoma State. Those games are all part of that challenge series. We'll try to track that scoreboard on that over the next few weeks as well. But Joby, speaking of conference challenges, I know you don't really want to go here, given what we just saw a few minutes before we started recording this, but your Virginia team start out the ACC Big Ten Challenge by falling down by 21 points, coming all the way back to take a lead, and then losing their game to Iowa anyhow.
It's a game between two teams that I think will be fighting for a spot in the field. It was a very good road win for Iowa. Give Iowa all the credit in the world. Bohannon was just on fire. It was beautiful to watch, from at least a Hawkeye perspective. The key for Virginia on this one was the lack of offensive rebounding, a lot of second chance points for Iowa when Shedrick was out with 2 fouls early. But the other bit of bright spot, and this is the key to the comeback, the 21-point comeback, is you've heard me say on this show in the past, the issue is Gardner inside, Franklin slashing. You need that 3-point shooter, and Clark and Beekman are not providing that. Tonight, Tane Murray, the freshman, nailed a lot of threes. And it's like, and even though he might not be the perfect guy because he doesn't know the pack line yet for Bennett said, hey, we're down 21. I'm going with a guy who can shoot and make it. And they produced the comeback. If Murray can get more into the rotation, then, Virginia can steady the ship. The defense is already ahead of, believe it or not, where it was last year at this time. And so The key is finding more offense. So not all's lost for Virginia, but yeah, the win at Providence is going to be a good win at the end of the day. But they're going to have to find themselves in the conference, and how many opportunities will there be in the conference, because the conference has not performed up to snuff. Segue, Chad.
And not up stuff, but Tell. There's one team, and probably only one team in this conference, that has clearly, performed up to snuff. And we already mentioned them already a little bit when we talk about the Zags, but Duke, unbelievably impressive in that Gonzaga win, with Banchero missing a good portion of the game with some cramping going on, and they still won that game.
Yeah, give Coach K and his troops all the credit in the world. Wendell Moore is playing like an All-American after having a very average sophomore year last season. Mark Williams, 8 of 8 from inside the arc. Unstoppable with the 6 blocks, getting it done on both ends of the court. I think that they are the favorite right now, obviously. I don't think that they can run the table just because the ACC has a lot of solid teams, as we can see on the board here. But yeah, certainly Coach K is going out in style. And then you have to wonder, if he wins a national championship, I assume he's just leaving on top regardless, but I wonder if he has second thoughts.
I think he's gone. No matter what, I don't think at this point, I think he should get all those gifts back if he does. But Dorman, the problem with the ACC is after Duke, there's solid teams, but there's no really other good teams.
I completely agree. This is not one of the banner years for the ACC. I'm with you, Chad. After Duke, it's a lot of mediocrity. One thing I am looking forward to and fired up for tomorrow night, Florida State is going to go into Mackey Arena and take on Purdue. Purdue, to me, is absolutely loaded. I think I'm higher on this team than most. But after Gonzaga and Duke, I like Purdue. Now, Florida State has the athletes. They have the bigs to go in there and compete tomorrow in Purdue. That's why I think tomorrow night could be a really great game with Florida State and Purdue.
Yeah, you see the upcoming schedule there with these upcoming games in the ACC Big Ten Challenge. As we record this, Illinois is up 6 points on Notre Dame in the other Monday night game, but you see all those Tuesday and Wednesday night games there, including a fascinating game, Joby, Wednesday. Louisville, who finally is going to have Chris Mack back at Michigan State, and they, without him, they found a way to go 5-1, which is about as good as I think we could have expected.
Yeah,
won their tournament.
And the loss was to Furman.
They stumbled against Furman, but I think that almost was a loss of Chris Mack. 3 really solid wins. I'm not saying that they were world beaters, but I think you go out and you beat Maryland, you beat Mississippi State, and as Virginia showed, you beat Navy. As it were. This team is probably the second best team, and I'm including Florida State on that. I think this is the second best team in the ACC, and maybe right now the only other team that really has a shot at a protected seed beyond the Duke Blue Devils.
Yeah, I kind of like that idea here. Griggs, we got interesting after the ACC Big Ten Challenge ends over the next couple of days here. We go into a couple of early conference games here coming up this weekend, Friday and Saturday. So we'll get it's going to be a fun week to watch ACC basketball, even if it's been disappointing so far.
And it's a big week for Louisville. They have the game at Michigan State, but NC State is sneaky good at home. It's one of those teams that they're good enough to beat good teams at home. I don't know if that makes them good across the board, but they are good at home. It's not easy to go there and win. So if Louisville can get both of those, I think it verifies what Joby is saying, that this is a team that you got to start thinking of as a protected seed caliber team. That would mean wins against, Maryland, Michigan State, NC State, and I forget who they beat in the first
Mississippi
game.
State.
Mississippi State.
A good
all
team.
the way from home.
That's a good
That's
team.
pretty good. Like that is a good couple of weeks worth of work right there.
Well, in NC State, we all know it's not the same team without Bates.
No, they're not.
That's a killer. But you're right. Going into the rack is the other rack is not a gimmick.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at the other half of the ACC Big Ten Challenge. And Dorman, you already mentioned a little bit about this Purdue team who's got this huge game coming against Florida State. But here they are, number 2 in the nation now, sitting here at 6-0 and one of 4 undefeated teams of the Big Ten, which does, after we ripped apart the Big Ten the other week, there's still 4 undefeated teams in the conference.
Yeah, and unlike the ACC, I think the Big Ten will have a stellar season coming up. I really like this Purdue team. Like I said, Ivy, they got bigs, they're athletic, they're good. I think Indiana, this game against Syracuse tomorrow will tell us. But so far, they look the part. They're ready to, show everyone that their program's back on track, and Mike Woodson's ready to show the country that Indiana can play basketball. Wisconsin is off to a good start. Northwestern, I think, will start to slip a little here as the competition gets a little stronger. But the Big Ten is absolutely loaded this year. Illinois is off to a rough start. They have some injuries. Now Frazier might be out with a hand. But the Big Ten is absolutely loaded top to bottom.
Yeah, we've got the Big Ten here with, other than Purdue, they've got those teams in the 20 through 25, the top 25, or maybe even just missing the top 25. But Tytel, we've got to talk about what Wisconsin did this week, going to Vegas. That's another tournament you were not at in Vegas, I think, but winning the Maui Invitational out there.
Yeah, if I planned it better, I would have stayed out there just because it was one of the greatest weeks of college basketball between the Gonzaga UCLA game and like 3 other tournaments. But all credit to Greg Gard and the Badgers. They lost so many guys from last year, but they still have Brad Davison, who I believe is in his 9th year of eligibility. And Johnny Davis is coming off of, I believe he won a gold medal with Team USA this summer and is playing like a all Big Ten player. They're still not great on the offensive end, but the defense looks solid. Only a 5-point home loss to Providence a couple of weeks ago. And usually you're most impressed by the team in the championship game. This is one of the ones, believe me, beating St. Mary's is legit. But when they beat Houston, albeit by only 2 points in the semifinals, that really caught my eye, because it's one thing to beat up on the Texas A&Ms of the world, which they won by double digits. But when you're beating a Final Four team like Houston, I'm starting to believe in this team.
Yeah, I'm there. And Griggs, I think another team that I believe in now, maybe this Michigan State team. I know they lost to Baylor, but Baylor is in a different planet. But you beat Loyola Chicago, and you beat a very good UConn team in the battle for Atlantis.
The win against UConn was really impressive. Loyola Chicago, I think, is a 40-ish team. Probably inside the bubble. I still think that they'll find a way to get there. So, but as far as a win that verifies their ranking and that verifies that this is a team that is top 25 caliber, the win against UConn was a fantastic win.
So that's where on what happened. Joe, in terms of the upcoming schedule here in the Big Ten, we've got obviously the ACC Big Ten. Just like the ACC, though, we're going to jump into some conference play this weekend with the fascinating Iowa Purdue game, as well as some other non-conference games,
including Penn State, Illinois, Iowa, like you said.
Yeah, Marquette, Wisconsin on top of that.
Yeah, big Marquette, Wisconsin
is exactly what I'm looking at. Even though it's not a conference game, it's a state rivalry game that between 2 teams that have probably surprised beyond expectations with some nice wins this year. We talked about Wisconsin. We'll get to Marquette when we get to the Big East. This, I would not have pegged this as a game between 2 pretty confident in my world tournament teams the way they've looked early. I would have said maybe if you had said there were 2 tournament teams, I'd have said, they'll face off in the NIT maybe. This is a real solid game between 2 teams that have the nice contrast of styles with Shaka and Gard, with the pack line of Wisconsin versus Shaka's Havoc return. So it'll be a lot of fun.
The other 2 games I think we got a circle here over the weekend. Minnesota at Mississippi State, a little interesting game, and at Titel, San Diego State, who you just saw in the Wooden, is at Michigan.
So I'm worried that both teams hate me because I saw them both lose in their championship games recently.
So this is a consolation game, right?
Yes, both of those performances were pretty piss poor, frankly. And I think I trust both coaches, Dutcher and Jawan, to get things turned around. But whoever loses that game is certainly going to start having not a hot seat under the coach, but medium warm.
Yeah. Dorman talked about Indiana a little bit already. This Indiana-Syracuse game, is there sort of a sense of urgency to this game for both teams? Do you get the sense that like this is a game that if your season's going to take off, it better take off soon, and they both need this one?
I think Syracuse needs it a lot more than Indiana.
I agree.
I think Indiana.
Absolutely.
I mean, Indiana's undefeated for goodness' sake.
Indiana's going to the
road to
pastry
Syracuse. Yeah. That's just a blip. And if you go 500 in this Big Ten, combined with what Indiana's done today, with only a loss to Syracuse, I don't know Indiana's other out of conference left. Well, I assume to win it. If they do that, they're in. Syracuse. They've had some stumble out of conference right now. And the ACC, unlike the Big Ten, is not going to provide you with the opportunities to get wins against tournament teams. So,
yeah, I mean, to rephrase it, Indiana hasn't shown much. They're definitely going to get opportunities to show us something, but how many teams, probably around 100, would be 6-0 against that schedule? If they go to Syracuse and win, then they've got my attention.
They got the Syracuse trip. They've got a neutral court game against Notre Dame coming up as well. But yeah, the non-conference is pretty weak though here. I'll give you that.
And one more thing, we kind of talked about this, or Chad and Zach and I did. Are we even acknowledging the Big Ten ACC Challenge this year? Because Penn State and Boston College are not playing.
BC won by 20 tonight. Oh my goodness!
But they're not. They weren't playing Penn State. It just is not the Big Ten ACC Challenge without Penn State and Boston College squaring.
Okay, here. Let's go to the Big East. Let's just keep Dorman. Let me bring you back in. Head over to the Big East. And you know what? Let me do it again. I did to you last week. You're in the Chicago area. There's your Blue Demons, still undefeated on top of the conference standings.
They're 6-0. They're playing good basketball.
Against bad teams.
There's a really against bad teams. But this Saturday, they get to play Loyola of Chicago, and that is a good team. So, that is a underrated, very, very good game Saturday in Chicago. DePaul, I believe it's on DePaul's home court. So, Loyola's been tested. We've seen Loyola already tested against some very good teams at Michigan State. We know Loyola is good, but we don't know much yet about DePaul. And this will tell us a lot because the 6-0 is against nothing good. But here comes their first test. And I would expect the building to be pretty busy, which is not the usual for DePaul home games, and a little excitement building around both these teams in the Chicagoland area.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Joe, when I look at the Big East, though, in all seriousness, you've got 9 teams there. Villanova, number 6 in the nation, but they're down there with 2 losses already, although 2 very good losses. But everyone else with the 1 loss, and so I don't really have much of a feel for a lot of these teams. Look at Providence; they get blown out for Virginia. Is Virginia good? Are they not good? I had to throw that at you.
Wisconsin, that Wisconsin team we were all complimenting just a few seconds ago. I like this Providence team. So as a matter of fact, go down the list of these. Take DePaul out. We've already ragged on DePaul's schedule. Every one of those teams has a really solid win to their credit, to their resume, except probably St. John's. And so, I think the Big East, we talk about where, if the ACC is handing out bids, that are not going to be getting those 7-8 bids, all this preseason said, where are they going to go? Big 12, Big East are 2 places where it could go, where a lot of those could flow.
Titel, if you look at this conference, though, I guess maybe what we should do is take a look at the upcoming schedule here in this conference. This may not be the week, unless these other leagues, to find out too much until we get maybe to that Marquette, Wisconsin game on Saturday and the big Rhode Island Providence, which is a big rivalry game at least.
That's a fun game. Oh, it's always great.
It is. I hope we can skip over that Villanova Penn game because that could get ugly very fast. And I agree, Marquette, Wisconsin is going to be the biggie. The other one I want to point out on Saturday is a 6-1 Creighton team against an undefeated Iowa State team. At the start of the season, I don't think anybody would have circled this one on the calendar, but it could actually be as David would say, a sneaky good game.
Yeah.
But Griggs, we know you're going to be watching Saturday Nyack College at Seton Hall instead.
I will
Why?
not be watching that. Well,
Why?
unless Nyack gives me a reason to.
Why do you schedule that game? I just don't.
That is just that's pissing away. You get 31 if you're an exempt tournament, and essentially that's saying, okay, we're fine with just playing 30-year-old ones.
Yeah, there you go. Butler's doing it on Tuesday with Saginaw Valley. I mean, just at least be like Georgetown and play Longwood, or Marquette, play Jackson State. Play at least a game that will count in the standings.
Well, and you're playing Jackson State. That's a good way to give back to the HBCUs. And I'm not kidding when I say that. There's at least some foundation. You're helping a program that
Well, they're giving back to the NAIA. Come on.
Georgetown might. Title in the chat here. Georgetown might lose to Longwood.
I wasn't even going to torture Titel with the Georgetown question. Let's go to the SEC instead. And Griggs, we have 3 undefeated teams here in LSU, Arkansas, and Florida. Obviously, Alabama, Kentucky, even Auburn. I mean, a lot of good teams here as well. Actually, if you want to talk where it's going to go, this is the other conference that they're going to be going to, I think.
Yeah, I think so. And some of those teams that do have a loss, they got them in high-end tournaments where they also picked up some pretty good wins. So really no shame in that. LSU not overly tested yet, but still off to a good start. But I have been impressed with Arkansas. I think they've looked really good. They won their event. They beat a Cincinnati team that is a little bit schizophrenic. We'll talk about them in a minute, but I have been impressed with what I've seen out of them so far.
Impressed with them. Let's talk about Alabama though. At Titel, Alabama. They lose the game to Rick Pitino's Iona Gales, and now they've got to play Gonzaga coming this week, as we already mentioned earlier. Was this a fluke because Iona then turned around and loses to Belmont, or was this, or is there cause for concern here with Alabama?
I do not think there is cause for concern. I think when you lose to a NCAA tourney team in Iona with a Hall of Fame coach like Rick Pitino. Granted, you're favored to win the game and you should win the game, but I think you have a built-in excuse, not that it's a fluke, but that you're not playing for example, Nyack College, no offense. I think that the Tide is just going to be fine. I don't know why they decided to schedule Gonzaga and Houston on back-to-back Saturdays in December, and then Memphis, that's a very tough December. But losing by 4 points to Iona on neutral court, I do not think is going to ruin their year.
No.
That could wind up, if I want to see the metrics, but that could end up being a tier 1, at least tier 2 loss. I don't think it's going to be.
Iona's going to blow through the Metro Atlantic. I mean, we might see them in the rankings, but before the end of the year,
right?
I think they're going to be inside the bubble.
Even after their loss to Belmont.
Yeah. Chad, you're an under the radar guy, and I guess David is too. Iona inside the bubble is better than a 50% chance, I think, especially if you win against Alabama.
I think Iona's going to pick up the gaudy record. In terms of inside the bubble, they could be a team that's ranked 15th in the nation and sitting on the 8 or 9 line, though. At the end,
but that's inside the bubble.
Well,
it's 3 lines inside the bubble.
That's yes, is it inside the bubble? Yes, but it's not a slam dunk either.
Yeah.
And if they happen to slip up in the MAAC conference tournament, I think the MAC is looking at 2 bids. I really do. That's a very strong win against a very good SEC team.
And not to go under the radar, but a loss to Monmouth, away is not going to kill them either in the conference.
Monmouth was a good Monmouth this week. A little bit under the radar preview of what's coming up on Wednesday.
Just real quick mention of Mississippi State here as well. The loss to Louisville, they did beat a decent Richmond team, though. They came back and beat them on Saturday. Maybe we find out more about them this week with their good games. But I think it's worth, at least mentioning them real quick here. But yeah, Mississippi State does have the game, not Thursday against Lamar, but Sunday against Minnesota is the one I'm talking about.
Yeah, and that is a big one.
A few other games to note here. We've got Tennessee, who we haven't even discussed. They're sitting down there, 10th place in those standings. Wow. They got a road test at Colorado. I think they're a lot better than this Colorado team, but Joby, it is a road test. It's not
Yeah,
and it's across the
anytime you're on
country
the
there.
road, you get the win. It's going to, this, I mean, that's more of a question for David, who basically says if you don't have a road win, you're not allowed in the NCAA tournament at all.
I fully believe that.
but you know what? And it is at altitude to a degree, and so but yeah, no, that'd be a solid win. Colorado's not the team they were last year by any stretch of the imagination, but would be indeed a solid win on the road.
Yeah, the other sneaky good game to keep an eye on is Wednesday night, Ohio U at LSU. Very good Ohio
That's
U
a
team out of
great
the Mid-American
one. Yeah, that's a good one.
And let's give, since we're still in the SEC, let's give Kentucky credit for a couple of weeks ago, basically drilling that very good Ohio. I actually thought, as you know, from this podcast, that Ohio might have a shot in that one. Kentucky closed the door fast on that game. It was never in doubt. And that, to me, if you're watching Kentucky tonight double up, directional Michigan, Kentucky's playing defense again. It is very, very interesting. That's what Calipari has not been able to do with COVID last year in particular. He was able to set his defense. It's playing a lot better. Watch out. And Kentucky lost to Duke. Well, we're finding out that isn't so bad after all.
Let's Tytel and bring you back in here, because you got to go to a pair of events which were both won by Pac-12 teams, Arizona and USC. Let's talk a little Pac-12, and you want to talk both of them or one of them? Go ahead.
I'll do both.
Okay.
So the thing that stood out to me was the size. If you look at the rankings of the average height of a roster in the nation, you got 3 Pac-12 teams in the top four. Florida State leads the nation with an average height of 6'7". The next 3 all around that: Arizona, Stanford, USC. Now, Stanford is not having the best season, as you can see, but the Cats and the Trojans, they win with height. For Arizona, Christian Coloco and Azuolas Tubelis inside are blocking shots and getting rebounds and changing shots and all that stuff. USC, they have 4 starters who are 6'9" or taller. Drew Peterson as the shooting guard is 6'9", and Isaiah Mobley, who is not the next Evan Mobley, but was the MVP of the Wooden Legacy, was great. He shoots threes and rebounds and scores inside and makes free throws. These teams are legit top 20 teams, and much like Joby apologized earlier, I got to apologize to all of you. I really thought this was not going to be Arizona's year. They were average last year. They lost a ton of guys to transfers. They have a first-year coach. I was 100% wrong. They look fantastic.
Of course, they're not the first place team in these standings, because Colorado and Stanford became the first 2 teams in the nation last night to play a conference game. Colorado was in first place, but
I'm sure there's been conference games in November before. Or
not many.
That was I don't ever recall
the ACC kicked off the regular season.
That's right.
A few years ago. Syracuse, Virginia start off, and I think North Carolina played Pitt or something. But
Yes, thank you, Joe. I'd forgotten all about that. The launch of the ACC network, they had conference games on opening night.
Okay. Let's go through the rest of the conference here real quickly. Dorman, you're being a Pac-12 guy as well. Unfortunately, we've not seen a lot. The other teams beyond Arizona, USC, and obviously UCLA that we've been kind of keeping an eye on, I think, were both Utah and Washington State. Utah lost, be it to a very good BYU team. Washington State, a home loss to a not so good Eastern Washington team.
I was high on this Wazoo team coming into the season. They did slip up there at home. I'm interested to see how they play out the next 2 to 3 weeks. Because Washington State has some nice pieces. Utah, coaching change, like you said, BYU is really good. That's not a bad loss. Oregon everyone loves Dana Altman, and Oregon has not looked like the usual Ducks. Struggling. Their defense isn't really playing well. They're not hitting their shots. And the rest of the league doesn't look real strong either. But there is some strength at the top, and the middle and bottom get real weak.
Yeah, I mean, weak performance in the exempt events here for a couple of these teams. Oregon, their only win in the Maui was over Chaminade. Arizona State, somebody's got to go 0-3 in the battle for Atlantis. Congrats to Arizona State. You were that 0-3 team.
And they earned it. They earned it. They were
they were a complete no-show, I thought here. But Griggs, the upcoming schedule, we've got a few more conference games actually coming in this week.
Yeah, Colorado at UCLA. Yeah, I guess that's the other half of that. But I'm big on the LA schools. I think they're both really good. I still kind of a sense of urgency here for Wazoo. If they can win on the road at Arizona State, then I think I'm still open to the possibility that they could have a big year. If they don't win that game, then I'm inclined to chalk it up as a team that's moving in the right direction, but is not at their destination yet.
Let's stay out west. So let's just jump over quickly to the Mountain West Conference.
Ooh, okay.
Maybe if it comes up here it is.
No, it's right. It's
you have a pair of undefeated teams, a pair of front range undefeated teams leading the way, Griggs, here with Colorado State and Wyoming.
And we kind of talked about this on the Wyoming did get a good win at Grand Canyon. Grand Canyon will probably not lose more than 2 home games a year, and half of those to Wyoming. It's tough to go there and win, and they did it. They deserve credit for that. I think they'll get some. Now, is it enough to carry them all the way to being inside the bubble? No, they got to do a lot more than that. But I'm open to the idea of Wyoming not sucking this year, which is kind of a new thing for them. Colorado State, why aren't they ranked? I mean, this is a team that I think is going to finish ranked possibly in the top 10. Not that I think they're one of the 10 best teams, but they're just going to move up by default. They've looked pretty good so far. We've pulled up their schedule, and you think that just law of averages, they might lose a game or two. They've got a couple tests coming up, but they're not going to lose many. This is a good
St. Mary's neutral court games against Mississippi State and Alabama, and then the conference play. So
yeah,
the problem is all being is Creighton and a bunch of nobodies, including a team from Peru.
Yeah,
I do agree, David. Though this is a very solid team, and the best way to say is look at the J&G right now. I mean, if it were held today, they'd be a 7 seed. That'd be
right.
Right now.
It seems like every year from one of the 3 conferences, the Mountain West, the A10, or the American, there's a team that just they're not top 10 good, but they are better than everyone else that they play, and they just keep winning and winning and winning, and they go from 24 to 22 to 21 to 19 to 18.
The Bonnies are that
everybody
team.
Ahead of them beats them. I think Colorado
Bonnies
State,
are that team. The Bonnies are that.
I think
team.
Colorado State might also be.
We'll get to them. I mean, they should have lost to Clemson, and Clemson's at the bottom half of a league that's having a down year.
Right. So. I think there's 2 of them this year, that it's the Bonnies and Colorado State. Because look at that schedule. Who's going to beat them?
On the right there, I pulled up the Wyoming schedule. They have at least got the test title at Arizona. Also, they'll be in the Diamond Head Classic, where they could get a decent Liberty team. They might get BYU in the championship of that event.
I assure you, we have not seen a battle of undefeated teams in Tucson in a long time. The fact that it could happen in a couple of weeks is exciting.
Let's San Diego State, obviously the other team, they did, they're sitting there 4-2. I think they're a team that we're not done with them by any means on this season. But upcoming schedule here for this week, at least, big battle here with the rivalry battle between New Mexico State coming up on Tuesday night.
And how about San Jose State? Number 1 in the net right now. What a turnaround. It's just a coaching job for the ages. It's just been amazing.
Actually, New Mexico State will be playing twice. They'll be playing again on Monday. And one of their head coaches out for that.
Are they? I missed that. I love it. They're doing it. So are they doing again? They're bringing back the back-to-back. They normally play twice, but the years they play back-to-back is awesome. It's like an aggregate in soccer.
Yeah. Okay. Anyhow, let's roll over. Joby, you brought up the A10. Let's jump over there with the Bonnies. I know you want to discuss them, so I'll just throw the Bonnies right over to you here. They did suffer the one.
That's a bad loss by them because Northern Iowa has a lot better name. That's saying something for a Missouri Valley team. Has a lot better name than what their performance has been. That is very disconcerting. Like I said, when you combine it with, struggling earlier against Clemson when they should have lost. They do have the nice win against that Marquette team that I personally also like. So it's not like this is not a tournament level team. I'm not saying that, but I have a feeling you will see them exactly as David was talking about with Colorado State. But you see, the Bonnies have already been ranked and are already getting noticed by voters. I think it's the Bonnies that will be top 10. And then all of a sudden, with a gaudy record, we mentioned a few weeks ago, they're going to be A10 Dayton top 10 type, rated, but they won't have Obi Toppin. Thank you, John Titel.
Yeah. And again, and how often like you see a team in the top 10, but they end up on the 5 or 6 line. I think now, again, I think it's going to be a fun ride for the Bonnies. I really like this team. How about Fordham is 5-3? Oh my God.
How about we don't have time to discuss Fordham on the show, but instead
5-3. That's
instead
amazing.
Titel, I am going to pull up a schedule here on the left here, where we see what Dayton started the season by with home losses to Lowell, Lipscomb, and Austin Peay. Then goes and wins the ESPN event down in Orlando by beating Miami, Belmont, and by the way, Kansas in an absolutely incredible game. We mentioned a little bit earlier, but this is a very young team, 12 freshmen on this roster out of 15 players. Did they take a few games to gel until they are gelled, or was this a fluke what happened down in Orlando?
Luke, I think they lose to Kansas like 8 times out of 10, but okay. I think they got a couple of things going for them. One is a former national coach of the year in Anthony Grant. Secondly, was the most ridiculous shot. Like the guy drives the lane, he's fading left, he shoots right, it bounces off the rim, off the glass, and in. Like if he tried it 9 other times, I think he misses 9 in a row. But for one shining moment, it went in.
Yeah,
and I think it was his first shot of the game too.
I just want to say that it's about time something actually went right for Dayton. One of the most snake-bitten programs in recent years, but I don't know. I was really impressed with how they played in that tournament. I do think the Kansas win was a fluke, but even that aside, they manhandled Miami. They beat a really good Belmont team. The Belmont win in and of itself, compared to how they started the season, you would have looked at that and been like, wow, that was a big surprise. It didn't seem like a big surprise because it followed one of the bigger surprises of the last decade or so. But where's Stalika when you need him? This Dayton team has lost 3 home bye games. Has anybody ever done that and landed inside the bubble? He would know if he were here.
I'll give you one. Yes. USC
made
the play-in. USC made the play-in game after having 3, I want to say tier 4 losses. And
really? Wow.
Yeah. But they combined it with like a win over Titel's Arizona, who was probably, a high protected seed. And, I mean, it was a wacky, it was the
that USC team thundered down the stretch from what I remember. We're getting a little bit off topic.
Yeah.
But there's one example. I bet you can't think. It doesn't happen that often that a team loses 3 home bye games and then wins a high end event like that.
Let's keep rolling along here. Just a few games to know coming up this week. Circle Saturday, UAB at St. Louis. Also circle a big Western New York Big 4 battle there between Buffalo and the Bonnies, and the Rhode Island Providence game on Saturday that we already briefly mentioned. Those are probably the biggest ones to circle. I would have been looking at Sunday's Richmond Northern Iowa game, but both teams are kind of disappointing so far this season.
They have been. I do not approve.
St. Louis at Boise State Tuesday night as well. Let's jump on one last conference here, the American, where Dorman, we've got 2 nationally ranked teams and a bunch of other teams in the conference. That's at least my view of it. I don't know if you disagree with that.
No, I don't disagree. I tuned in to watch that Memphis game the other night, and they were never in the game. I really thought Penny Hardaway had things going the right way. He put Larry Brown on his bench to assist him in X and O's game management, and they were totally run out of the gym. I was pretty surprised by the way Memphis looked and just ill-prepared to play the game. On the other hand, Houston did look very good. They ran Oregon out of the gym. They took one loss to, it's escaping me now.
Wisconsin.
Thank you, Wisconsin.
Well,
yes,
and they
exactly.
whipped Virginia before that. They
yes, they did.
When you compare what Iowa did to Virginia, beating Virginia and Houston, it's no contest who the real better team is between those two, and that's saying something. Houston's real. Houston is absolutely.
Yeah. The other, I guess, if there is a third team to look at, Titel, Wichita State's only loss was an overtime loss to Arizona. So, and I think you were at that game, right?
I did. They literally ran out of players. Some teams run out of time or something. Like Tyson Etienne, I mean, he made the three to send it into overtime, but he's only one guy. And they just ran out of guys after losing a couple key seniors from last year. Love the performance by Coach Isaac Brown, the coaching job of that, because he's going against a now top 12 team in the nation, and he's holding his own with a smaller lineup and with no guys on the bench.
Right. And then they did pick up the win at Missouri.
Chad, there's a team I want to talk about because they've had a real interesting season. Can we look at Cincinnati?
No.
Can you pull them up real quick?
I said no. All right. I'll pull
okay,
it up
no.
All right. Cincinnati, yes, spends 3 seconds being on our radar and then just falls right back down off of it with losing a home game to Monmouth. Go ahead.
A shocking win against Illinois in the sense that they were down by 15 and won by 20. I mean, they just blew them off the floor for the past 25 minutes of the game. A really, really strong showing against Arkansas where they didn't get the win, but you're still feeling pretty good about yourself. And then a home loss to Monmouth. How do you analyze, how do you assess that?
You wanted to call Dane a schizophrenic team. This is what a schizophrenic team looks like, in my opinion.
Yeah, they are. Maybe they're what are they 50 miles apart? Maybe it's just something in the water.
But yeah, I don't know how you analyze that. I mean, let's say, I mean, they've obviously with that Illinois win, there's a chance here for them, but they've got to pick up more wins.
Yeah, they do
this week. Nothing, at Miami, Ohio, home to Bryant, they'll probably lose. They'll probably split those two games.
Yeah, probably lose both of those and then sweep Houston.
Memphis, the game at Ole Miss on Saturday, and a game at Georgia on Wednesday. Those are maybe the two games to circle because they're road tests. But if Memphis is a good team, they should win both those games.
They should, yeah.
On that note, that does complete all the conferences I have on my list here, unless I missed somebody. Let me go ahead and pull the screen share down here, run through each of you for any other final thoughts on the night then. And Dorman, let me start with you.
I love this sport. I love college basketball. I watched last year, but there's just it's a different game when the fans are in the building and there's a buzz in the stadium. And it was just great to see all these gyms, whether they are neutral court or home games, and the excitement around the sport. And I give a lot of credit to Duke and Gonzaga and Kansas for scheduling these games. They don't need to besides Gonzaga, these other schools are going to play many huge games in conference, but they're going out of conference anyway, scheduling, whether neutral, on the road. And it's great to see. It's great for the sport. It doesn't hurt when you lose. It helps your team come March. I love to see all these great matchups. The sport is back. Fans are in the building, and I couldn't be more excited.
Yeah, it's been so great to see that so far this year. Titel.
So the performance from all of my travels that stood out to me the most was Taylor Funk of St. Joe's, and enjoy him now because you're not going to see him in March because it's St. Joe's, let's be honest. But he single-handedly took down the Hoyas, which again is not too difficult this year, but the guy made 8 threes. 2 years ago, he was shooting 25% from behind the arc. Now this year in early on, I know we've only been playing a couple of weeks, 54%, top 10 in the nation. And they're not all open threes. He's getting contested. He's getting runoff picks and stuff. It's just a pleasure to watch a guy be great at his craft and work hard to get there. And a nice, humble guy in the press conference. I wish him nothing but luck because he could be the best 3-point shooter in the Big Five.
Oh, there we go. Joey.
All right. So the headline game from last week obviously was Gonzaga Duke. A game between a team from an extremely strong conference going out of conference and taking on another one who has to schedule out of conference in order to build the resume. Yes, Duke, you have to build that resume by playing those Gonzaga and Kentucky type games, because the ACC just might not be delivering the same results. The West Coast, you have San Francisco undefeated. You have a BYU team that is sailing towards a protected seat. And then a team like St. Mary's, which will be in the discussion, and all boats being lifted. You never know if another team pops up, because there are so many tier 1 teams in the West Coast. If only the ACC could say the same thing. Maybe one day they will.
Yeah, maybe they still eventually could become a good basketball conference. Griggs, we didn't talk much about Michigan.
No.
Michigan tonight, but I just want to note that as we record this right now, late in the first half, Gonzaga is only up 2 on Tarleton, and Michigan played them this week. Do you want to finish off the show? You had a comment about that,
Yeah,
I think?
yeah, this was just, and again, Juwan Howard has done a fantastic job. I wasn't big on the hire. I thought it was more of a gimmick, but he's done great. He's recruited great. They're high in the rankings, and the buzz around this program is unbelievable. You know, their last home game, I believe they beat Tarleton State 65-54, and the place was just electric. Like, do we have the picture here? Look at this. And again, this is, Michigan beats Tarleton 65-54, and that campus was just unhinged.
Look at that crowd after the Michigan Tarleton win.
Yeah.
How about that Tarleton program bringing out that type of a crowd, David?
Right. Yeah. I mean, they were just pumped.
But on that note,
I think College Game Day might have even been there.
Yeah.
I do want to take the chance to thank everybody for joining us. We'll be back later on this week. We'll be recording Under the Radar and another Hoops HD report next week. But on behalf of David Griggs and John Teitel up here, Joby Fortson and David Dorman down there, I'm Chad Sherwood. Thanks for joining us. Talk to you again real soon.